A10, A11, and A12.
And finally, on page 6.
Same A12 goes to A13 on that.
And if I asked you the same questions in your that are in your pre-filed testimony today, would you give me the same answers?
Yes.
I'm handing you what's been marked as SunCommon 1. Could you identify that for the record?
It's my general resume.
And is that a copy of the resume that you pre-filed with your testimony?
Yes.
And I'm handing you an exhibit that's been marked SunCommon 2. Could you identify that for the record?
These are images. I believe these are all taken from through the desktop with Google, either aerial or satellite or however, and street view images of the array, potential array location, and the surrounding area.
And were those pre-filed with your, was that exhibit pre-filed with your testimony?
Yes.
And I'm handing you an exhibit that's been marked SunCommon 3. Could you please identify that for the record?
Yes, this is the revised site plan to take into account the recommendations made by the aesthetics expert, and we filed these as well.
Okay. And finally, I'm handing you what's been marked as SunCommon 4. Could you identify that for the record, please?
This is a copy of the original CPG that was filed back in May of 2015 for the project.
And this was executed by you, is that correct?
Yes.
I'd like to move for the admission of the pre-filed testimony of James Moore and exhibit SunCommon 1 through SunCommon 4.
Are there any objections?
No objection. No objections.
You're admitted.
So I'm going to, unless you want, I'm going to hand the court reporter the testimony and the exhibits that have the exhibit labels. James has a copy here. I'm happy to leave that, but I'm mindful that it's helpful when the court reporter and the hearing officer have the actual labeled exhibits so they don't get lost. Does anybody have a problem with that? All right.
Thank you.
There you go. Mr. Moore is available to talk.
Apologize for my cough.
I'll keep my distance.
Stay back.
I'll keep my distance. Thank you. I'm just processing all the number shifts now because I'm going to have to adjust my questionnaire. So, Mr. Moore, you are not a landscape architect, is that correct?
Correct.
In fact, you are not an aesthetic professional, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you did not perform a Quiche analysis of this project, did you?
Me personally, I'm not an expert, and I did not perform an expert Quiche analysis.
Mr. Moore, I'm looking at your exhibit SunCommon 4. I'm putting on my very attractive reading glasses. SunCommon 4, which is your original CPG application. The page labeled Attachment 3, which is unnumbered.
Which one?
is attachment 3,
That's a complete picture.
but it doesn't have date stamps on the page, so we can't tell it.
Attachment 3.
Okay. And I'm drawing your attention to the final paragraph there, in which you note that there can be needed shifts in the project at the time of construction. Can you explain what you mean by that? What shifts?
I wouldn't anticipate any, but I guess there's one project where I think we had a difficulty getting the posts in the ground in one location and had to shift the array 6 feet in one of the rows. So that type of minor adjustment that just comes with working on site occasionally, but generally speaking, we don't have to make adjustments like that.
And do you recall what caused that particular shift in the case you just cited?
I don't.
And you said in that instance you shifted, was it the project or one line of panels 6 feet?
No, it's just one line of things.
And in this case, as you sit here now, you're unaware of whether or not this project may need to shift, is that correct?
I think it's, as we note, that there can be, the need for minor shifts at construction, but we are unaware of anything that makes us think that it would be necessary.
And this site is constrained to the east by the boundary of wetlands, is it not?
That's correct. There are wetlands to the east of the array.
So shifting the project to the east would require having a conversation with Attorney Meenan's agency regarding wetlands permit, would it not?
Objection, that assumes something that the witness hasn't testified to.
Please, would I respond to the objection?
I'm exploring the directions in which this project could shift if it needs to.
Can you please restate your question?
Yeah, I will. So the project is constrained moving to the east due to the wetlands boundary, is that correct?
Certainly, there's a wetland there that's been delineated, and there's a buffer zone beyond that. For example, however, a 6-foot shift in one of those rows would be possible without impacting the buffer or the wetlands. There's within reason.
Ms. Cadwell, do you still have an objection?
No, I'm good. Thank you for asking though.
And the site is also constrained in terms of shifting to the south, is that correct?
The host driveway is to the south of the array. So I think that presents a constraint.
I just noticed there's somebody in the room here filming. Could we identify who this person is and why they're here?
I would object to that question. This is a public hearing room, and the public is entitled to be here, and there's no requirement that the public identify themselves. And they have the right to be present in an open meeting. There's no requirement of identification.
There's no requirement, but there's no harm also in understanding who's in the room and what the purpose of the filming is. And whether they understand the rules, that they can't film when council's talking and they can't zoom in or move around the room and that kind of thing. That's all.
I won't require you to identify yourself, but if you wish to do so, you can.
I don't have an issue. I'm Elizabeth Cooper. I work with Vermonters for a Clean Environment. Leslie Cadwell knows me well. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
I have some more. In that same exhibit, but again, we're still on SunCommon 4 at the page entitled Attachment 3. You note that in the third paragraph, you say potential views of the project will be visible, I'm leaving out a phrase, from the west wall on South Road. Can you tell me what South Road is?
I don't understand the question.
What is South Road?
It's a road.
And is it your testimony that that's the road this project is on?
Yes. This project that's the closest road to this project.
Mr. Moore, this project is also visible from Route 17, isn't it?
I'm not aware that it would be, and if it is, it would be very, very small.
And Jack has moved to strike the second portion of that, he stated he was not aware.
The witness is allowed to answer. She may not like the answer, but his answer stands.
He stated the second portion of that, the second phrase, there is no personal knowledge of it. The initial phrase was, I'm not aware of it. So he stated he has no personal knowledge, so the second is not based on, the second phrase in that sentence is not based on personal knowledge.
I don't understand the objection. She asked him a question and he answered it. If she doesn't know the answer to the question, she shouldn't ask it.
I asked if he knew it would be visible for, if it was visible from Route 17. He said he did not know, and then proceeded to continue to qualify it with a phrase that was not from personal knowledge.
So I guess, again, I would just say, you know, it's admissible and it goes to weight.
I'll leave it in the record.
So, Mr. Moore, are the attachments to your corrected pre-filed testimony of November 24th? That is attachments attachment 3. Is that your present project site plan?
I guess I would object only insofar as there were no attachments. There was an exhibit that
I'm
was
sorry,
attached.
I correct. Exhibit SunCommon 3 to your corrected pre-filed testimony. Is that in fact your present site plan?
Yes.
And the item marked Exhibit 3, page 1, is in fact, does in fact not represent the present location, present proposed location of those panels, does it?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Does, I'll rephrase it, Exhibit SunCommon 3, page 1,
Yes.
does that accurately and to scale represent the proposed location of the panels?
Yes. That's my understanding.
I'm going to draw your attention to Exhibit SunCommon 3, page 4 of 4. Approximately halfway down the page at the new moon bullet point, the open bullet point, it states, my apologies that this illustration is made on the old site map, not the updated site map. Is that in reference to this Exhibit SunCommon 3, page 1?
I don't believe so. So I think that's in reference to the Miss Rain submitted or laid out kind of where she gave an example of how she would recommend the planting to happen. But she did that example on an old site plan, not this one. And that example she made clear was for, how she was describing the plants wrapping around the corner of the array a bit to the north and a bit to the south, and that was done on a different plan, but what she was recommending is that general planting layout be applied to this location of the panels, which reflected our desire to respond to New Haven's request to move them farther from the South Street.
So let me return to that Exhibit SunCommon 3, page 4 of 4. Do you have that in front of you?
3.
Exhibit 3, page 4 of 4.
Yep.
And that is a page which at the top is titled Gene Vissering's Recommendations. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you in fact cut and pasted that from another communication, did you not?
Yeah, I believe that's right. I think that was in an email, as my recollection.
So that is only a portion of that communication, is that correct?
It's the portion with her recommendations.
I would move that the entirety of that communication be placed into evidence. And that the witnesses testified that this is a cut and paste portion of a communication, and I would like to submit the entirety of that.
Do you have an exhibit?
No, I would want to.
Are there any objections to the admission?
I would have to see what it is she's going to mark.
We'll hold on for a minute.
I'll label it Town Cross 1, if that is amenable to the hearing officer and the court reporter and counsel.
You know what I mean? You could call it cheeseburger too, and I wouldn't care.
Town Cross 1. Old habits, yeah. So I'm showing Commissioners Council and marked Town Cross 1.
So you're not providing the one that I date stamped in Discovery? I'm gonna have to take it back.
Let's do that instead.
Yep, we're good. And I will stipulate to the admission, because I don't know that you could identify it exactly.
And I'll have this marked if I may. And move its admission. Is that the same as this? Would you like to do it? I'm allowing DPS counsel to review the exhibit. Mr. Meehan, would you also like to review the exhibit?
No, thank you.
Okay, cut down.
So can you please describe the exhibit?
Yes. Town Cross Exhibit 1 is an email from DPS Attorney Jeannie Oliver that contains within it the text which has been cut and pasted by Mr. Moore and labeled as, and that Mr. Moore labeled as being Vissering's recommendations. It includes the attachment that had come with that recommendation, which is indicated as a suggested planting area. And with that marked as Towns Cross 1, and with the understanding that there was stipulations in the admission, I moved the admission.
Does the department or A&R object to the admission?
The department does not object to the admission.
Neither does A&R, thank you.
returning, Mr. Moore, to your exhibit SunCommon 3, page 1.
Yes.
Can you tell me, please, what is the dimension from the roadside to the fence line? To the westerly fence line? From the easterly side of the road to the westerly side of the fence line?
I don't believe that's measured out in exhibit 3. There's on page 3 of 4. There's a measurement of 150, it looks like roughly from the midline to the edge of the array.
I'm sorry, page
Midline of
3 of
South-
4 of what, sir?
Exhibit 3. Exhibit SunCommon 3.
I have exhibit SunCommon 3, a wetlands illustration.
Yep, that's correct. And there, to the, just above and to the left of the array, it says 150 feet, and I believe that demarcation is from the corner of the array to the midline of South Street. So, you know, you're asking for the fence line to the somewhere along the edge of the street. So it'd be a little bit less than that amount.
And can you also tell me what is the length of the fence line, the length of the westerly fence line from north to south?
On page 2 of 4, same exhibit, exhibit SunCommon 3, it appears that from there's a number on the easterly edge of the array, the 153 feet and 4 inches estimate is, so then if you're asking for the fence line, it's probably a little bit more than that. So, you know, I would say approximately 180. Approximately.
So your testimony is that the north to south fence line in this project is approximately 180 feet, is that correct?
Yeah.
Returning to SunCommon 3, page 1. Is it your testimony as represented on this exhibit that it is at a scale of 1 inch to 40 feet?
I guess I would object, the question is compound, or it's testimony on the exhibit, it's either the exhibit or it's testimony. So I guess if you rephrase the question.
Mr. Moore, does this exhibit illustrate your project at a scale of 1 inch to 40 feet?
This exhibit does, but that's impacted by the scale, obviously, that you print this at. So if we printed it on a really big page piece of paper, that would still read 1 to 40 and would need to be adjusted. I don't know if that was adjusted for this scale printing. When we submit the CPGs, I believe now they request, I can't remember what the request was at that point, whether it was 8.5 by 11 or the 11 by 17. So I'm not confident in whether or not that matches up. I'm more confident in the page 2, the actual dimensions measured out by that are depicted there.
So, sticking with page 1 of 4, there are author initials regarding this document in the lower right-hand corner. Can you tell me who JMF and DDB are?
I'm gonna object, this is like discovery, she could have asked all these questions in discovery, or can you make a proffer of like what the point of this is?
I'm just establishing that Mr. Moore does not, in fact, have personal knowledge of the scale of this diagram.
The exhibit's already admitted, I don't know what the purpose of that is. There's no objection to it, he's competent to testify to it, you didn't object to it, so what's the point?
Ms. Cadwell, would you object to the question of whether Mr. Moore prepared this exhibit?
No, but I don't think what's the point? It's already in.
The point is that we're here to talk about aesthetics. Mr. Moore has testified that this is his site plan. He represents that this is his site plan. And so in assessing the site plan regarding its aesthetic impact, we can talk about the scale of these mitigation plantings and the location of this array.
Well, then
And
you
so
can-
whether the scale in fact represents how that scale of this diagram relates to the aesthetic impact of this project as proposed is relevant to the question of its visual impact and whether or not we can assess it based on what you submitted.
So the initials on the corner of box have nothing to do with that. And he already answered the question about scale. He answered the question, we can read it back, which was, this scale may not be appropriate for this size print. That's it. And all of that information was could have been asked in discovery to flesh it out. I just don't understand, if you want to ask him questions about whether this looks exactly like what it's going to look like, you can ask him that. I just don't see the relevance of going through all the initials, because none of those people, clearly, his name is not James Moore F. They're not here. So can we focus on the issue?
And so, are the initials central to your line of questioning?
I believe I can work with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, you did not prepare this diagram, did you?
That is correct. We have staff who have the technical skills to locate this specifically on the Google Earth image, which is the underlying image, and make sure that it's to scale for...
Okay, it was a yes or no question. You did not prepare this, did you?
I'm going to object because she interrupted the witness. He's trying to answer the question. She should let the witness answer and then she can follow up. But interrupting is not fair.
I think if she asks a yes or no question, she can, try to get a yes or no answer.
May I re-answer the question?
Sure.
To the extent that we have staff that work at SunCommon for me as co-president of the company, I had a hand.
I'll object again. The question was yes or no. Mr. Moore, did you yourself prepare this illustration?
I did not
Okay, thank you.
prepare this illustration.
In regards to the, what are the circles on that illustration, the green circles?
The circles represent the plantings that are contemplated in the site plan.
And those trees are in fact not represented at scale, is that correct?
They aren't planted yet. So they're not the scale. I believe that we submitted to the town, the types of plantings that we intend to put at the array, and included in that how large those plantings will grow to and mature. And I believe that these circles are, roughly approximate to those measurements.
Mr. Moore, you testified a few moments ago that the north-south fence line on this array would be approximately 180 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how many of the large green circles do you have running north to south on the westerly side of this array?
Six.
And are those circles depicted as, would you say that those circles are depicted as nearly touching, coming close to touching?
Yep.
And so, what is 180 divided by 6, please?
You're gonna have to do that. 30.
So is it your testimony that these trees are 30 feet in diameter?
No, that's not my testimony. These trees haven't been planted. And they don't touch. I need to, if you're asking specifically about the different varieties and how they would grow, I would need to go back and review that part of the testimony.
But you're not a landscaper, are you?
Correct.
And drawing your attention to your pre-filed testimony at answer 8, the corrected answer 8. Do you have it in front of you, sir?
I do. This starts with if the project were screened.
Correct. And on the next line, line 10 on page 4, you state that there are, quote, no groomed hedges. Is that correct?
I state that there are no groomed hedges or substantial formal landscaping of that type in the area.
And has anyone here proposed groomed hedges to screen this project?
I don't believe so.
And has anyone proposed substantial formal landscaping for this project?
I don't understand your question.
Well, let me ask you this. What did you mean by formal landscaping? Are we talking Downton Abbey here? What are we talking?
Can we just have one question at a time?
What do you mean by formal
I
landscaping?
didn't see Downton Abbey in here.
I apologize.
What I was trying to address with this answer is,
My question is, what do you mean by
Can
formal
we-
landscaping?
Let the witness answer the question without having him ask another question.
I would like an answer to the question and not an explanation of what we were trying to say. The question is, what do you mean by formal landscaping?
what we note here is that there are no groomed hedges or substantial formal landscaping in that area, and was characterizing in my mind, you raised Downton Abbey, that would certainly qualify as formal landscaping, but I think the idea that it's not a heavily landscaped neighborhood or area, and that's not the how I would characterize what you've got around there.
morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning.
In the original comments filed by the town this summer, and I apologize for not having the date in my mind right now, they requested having the project located 150 feet from the edge of the roadway as opposed to the center line of South Street as you proposed. Has SunCommon considered whether 150 feet from the edge of the roadway is possible?
My conversations with our design staff, what we bump into there is that easterly fence line in the shed, and that there isn't much room, and then you're also, that begin to be concerned about shade from the shed at the height that it is if the array gets too close to it. So those were two of the factors that we wanted to push it as far as we reasonably thought we could, and we wanted to maintain kind of the straight line and shape where possible, because we thought that was aesthetically nicer. So those were the considerations. I guess the answer is yes, we considered and we tried to accommodate the best we could.
And looking over the various filings that have occurred in this proceeding, it's not clear to me whether you are planning on installing a perimeter fence. It has been discussed as an option. Are you aware, as I'm sitting here today, whether you're proposing a fence?
I'm not. It didn't seem to be an issue of concern raised specifically with the aesthetics of the fence one way or another. It's a farm fence, kind of most of our arrays, and my understanding is most of the arrays of this size and larger have those, and wasn't aware that the fence itself was aesthetic concern for anybody.
Okay. And do you know when the decision as to whether to fence or not will be made?
I don't. I think when we get the CPG, if we get the CPG, then we'll have to make the 4 construction drawings, and that will have the fence or not. Is I think probably when we would anticipate making that decision at this point.
So my job here today is to consider the aesthetic impacts of the project. So should I assume that there will be a fence?
I think that's the safest assumption, and we're flexible, and if the issue, and we tried to convey that from our very first filing of the CPG, that we're very open to comments and suggestions. We tried to convey that to the town as well, and the board and the department, and we didn't receive any intense focus on the fence, so we hadn't. I wasn't under the impression that that was an aesthetic concern, a farm fence in this area. But we are still open to suggestions.
In the town's comments that were dated July 29th, 2015, New Haven requested vegetative screening consisting of, and I'm going to open quotes here, a mix of varied height deciduous, evergreen, and herbaceous species in staggered and irregular groupings reflective of the surrounding landscape, close quotes. And New Haven also requested that the petitioner work in good faith with the town or its designee. And my understanding is that you have now proposed some vegetative landscaping, and I'm wondering whether SunCommon or SunCSA 22 LLC has consulted with the town of New Haven in developing the landscaping plan.
We asked for input from the town, and after the pre-hearing meeting, asked to try and settle this with the town, and the response that we got back from the town was it wasn't geared. It didn't feel like it was geared in any way towards how can we reasonably address these issues. The request was SunCommon should pay a lot more in taxes and move the array to a completely different part of the project that would, or part of the land that wasn't a viable option. So we tried to engage there and didn't feel that we got back comments that we could work with. So we worked with the best information that we had from our own experience, and then also the recommendations from the aesthetic expert and what they recommended for plantings, and that was the best that we could work with reasonably.
Okay. And again, in the town's July 29th comments, evergreen landscaping was one of the proposals. Can you tell me whether SunCommon has included evergreen plants in the proposed landscaping plan?
I don't believe we have. It wasn't what was recommended by the aesthetic expert. I wanted to yield to that expertise. If we're open to adjusting what those plantings are, but we're in a position where the town was flat out opposing, and we had an aesthetic expert that recommended these plantings, so that's what we went with. If the town would like us to include some evergreens that are limited in growth and height because of the proximity to the array, we're very open to that being part of the landscaping plan. A lot of evergreens grow to problematic heights when they're that close to an array, and that was one of the other recommendations of the aesthetic expert, is put the plantings closer to the fence line rather than, or the array rather than along the road. And if they were that close and were varieties that grew to a problematic height from shading, then they would need to be groomed. And that aesthetic of the groomed hedge is not one that we, it's not the Hamptons and the tall groomed hedges or whatever, so we hadn't gone that route. But we're flexible on what those plants are if they would please all of the parties.
I'm going to ask you a few questions that I believe were also asked in discovery, and unfortunately, the responses provided to the board, the answers were cut off, so I'll ask.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
They were.
They were? Why didn't anybody say anything to me? Sorry. What's that?
For the three species, I believe it was three species that are included in the planting plan, can you tell me how long it would take for the plants to reach maturity?
I would have to consult the nursery. I don't know where we would get those. I don't have that information in front of me. If that's on, I can't remember if that's included on the description of those species or not. I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah, I would request that you follow after today's hearing for the response.
What was the question again? How fast they mature?
How many years it would take for the plants to reach maturity?
Sir, could you just note which discovery question that is, and for Ms. Cadwell?
That one may or may not have been a discovery question.
Yeah, the three missing, the missing responses, it was the one that had A, B, C, D, and.
Correct. That means, E, F, and G were missing.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I see it now, yeah.
I'm just reading it into the record.
Yeah, thank you.
Response to question 14 on page 15 of the applicant's responses to the town of New Haven's discovery request. It's missing the answers to E, F, and G, and I believe those are the questions that they, approximate the questions that the hearing officer was.
That's right, my line of questionings will be an approximate resemblance of those.
Okay.
Can you tell me the diameters that the proposed plants are likely to reach at maturity?
I would want to review that specifically if I could. My recollection is, depends on the variety, and I think it was in a range of 6 to 20, 25 feet, I can't remember.
I'm handing the witness a copy of the applicant's responses to the discovery so he can follow along with the hearing officer.
So my question was an approximate rephrasal of question 14F. The latter question, the diameters that the plantings are expected to reach.
May I make a suggestion? Can we just enter these into the record? I mean, I've done that before, is just stipulate to, I don't have any problem with what they said going in.
The discovery responses?
Yeah, I mean,
None of us have seen those yet, so I don't have a problem with that.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant the ones that were already answered. You're talking about the ones that were missing.
Correct.
I apologize. So we can't do that, because they weren't provided to you yet.
Which is why I'm asking them now.
Now I understand, I'm following. I apologize.
Yeah. I believe it's in the range of 6 to 25 feet on the canopies. The widths, I could certainly follow up with everybody if that is different after I go back and review. But I'm pretty sure that's the range, depending on the plan.
Okay. To the extent that your review comes up with a different answer than a range of 6 to 25 feet is what I believe you just testified to, you have an obligation to make a correction.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks. Oh, I'm sorry. Here on response B, the horizontal spread of the proposed plants ranges from 6 to 25 feet. So, that is,
And the spread refers to the diameter of the plant as opposed to the spacing between plants? Is that
horizontal spread of proposed plants ranges from, yes, I believe that's true, and that's what I will confirm with the, document from the office.
A clarification, I thought the hearing officer's question was an or. Was it the diameter or the spacing, and the answer was a yes, and I would request clarification.
Can we have her read it back?
Can we have a read it back?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, down a little further, just a minute. So my question was an approximate rephrasal of question 14F, the latter question, the diameters that the plantings are expected to reach. Let me see if there's a clarification on that. Okay, and And the spread refers to the diameter of the plant as opposed to the spacing between plants, is that correct?
So in B, in 14B, whether the plant's diameters, and then it's described as the horizontal spread. And then we answer B, the horizontal spread ranges from 6 to 25 feet at maturity. The plants will not be fully mature when they're planted, and may not be at their full spread at that point.
And this follows from question 14G, and I didn't receive the response, so I'll ask you, can you please tell me the height of the plants when they are planted?
I think what I'd like to review is the, actually, I believe that Ms. Hill put in that email from that included Ms. Vissering's recommendations.
Town Cross one?
Nobody has a copy of the court report.
Oh, it's a
Where is my notes?
This is Town Cross one.
Thanks. I hope it's good enough.
Can I ask, are the letters that were filed in this proceeding part of the record, or are they outside of the record? Because I note that there's a description of the sizes in SunCommon's letter of July 14th, 2015, responding to the town's comments. I just wonder if that's part of the record or not.
I hadn't offered it, but I'm happy to have it go in.
And I'll note that we had that discussion yesterday before a different hearing officer, which was the question of the things that had not been entered evidentiarily. In this case, that would include the town comments letters that you've now inquired about, this letter of SunCommon.
I don't know why they would be part of the record if they're not in evidence. So what I'm saying is, if you want it in evidence, I have no problem stipulating to it, and I have no problem stipulating to the town's comments.
I think it'd be if my recollection serves me, I think that'd be helpful in this instance, because we did try and describe and discuss the plantings in that letter, trying to be responsive to the town in a way that I don't think any of these documents in front of me do.
So the conversation that we had yesterday is that there's the administrative record file that includes all these letters, and then there's the evidentiary file of these hearings. And the problem is that the line then becomes blurred, and again, in this case now you've referred to the town's comment letters, so I would move the omission of the town comment letters. Attorney Oliver just referred to, the witness just referred to other letters from SunCommon, so the question is, shall we have a list or make an omnibus removal of the remainder of the communications into the...
Well, I actually would object to all of the town comments going in, because they address issues that aren't for hearing, and I'm not interested in having those part of the evidentiary record in this case, since that's not, none of those other comments other than aesthetics are at issue. So I don't have any problem with you cross-examining the witness on those. But I do object to the rest of the town's comments going into evidence, because most of the comments, other than aesthetics, are irrelevant.
Then we would have similar requests to redact any other filings, which means us sitting and going through that record of what is intended to come in.
And what I'm saying is that the town wanted to have those comments as part of the evidentiary record. They had an opportunity to pre-file. Those are what the rules say, and they didn't. I don't have any problem with those going in redacted after the hearing. Absolutely not. That's fine. We don't have to do that here today. The letter from SunCommon that is being referred to, the July 14th letter, is only about aesthetics. So I'm happy to have that in. I just don't think it's fair to put irrelevant information on issues that aren't for hearing into the evidentiary record, that's all.
My proposal is that we not move any of these in at this time, and I continue with my line of questioning. We can take a break at some point, and the parties can confer as to what part of the administrative record, we'll call it, they would like like to move into the evidentiary record. And the parties are welcome to do that offline, and then we'll reconvene. So, I will ask my question again. Mr. Moore, can you please tell me the height of the plants that you were proposing when they are planted?
So the witness is looking at an exhibit, may I know what it is, please?
This is that letter from July 14th.
And that letter is not in evidence, so how did we get it in front of the?
Because he can use it to refresh his recollection. That's one of the rules of evidence I think you're familiar with. And that's what he said he was doing. He needed something to refresh his recollection.
Let's see.
So let's see. 6 foot tall when planted. 6 foot tall when planted. 6 foot tall when planted. So it looks like all the varieties that we laid out would be approximately 6 feet tall when planted, and would mature to heights of 10 or greater feet.
Okay. Would any of the plant species is there potential for any of the plant species to mature at a height less than 10 feet?
How do you answer that? I mean, I think whenever you plant a plant, it's possible that it doesn't grow as expected. But the expectation, the understanding that we've gotten from the landscaping companies that we work with, and the generally available kind of information to us is that they should all mature to heights. The reasonable expectation is that they'll mature to heights of 6 feet or taller.
Thank you. I'm going to try to be specific here, and I am referring to the July 14th, 2015 letter that was filed, and on the second page of that letter, there's a description of the 3 plant species. Can you please state as specifically as you can the expected height of each plant species at maturity?
The serviceberry, we expect at maturity a maximum of 15 to 25 feet. The witch hazel, expect maximum height of 6 to 10 feet. And the red feather, we expect maximum height of 6 to 10 feet.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, do you have exhibit SunCommon 3 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Will you please turn to page 3?
Yes.
And can you please tell me if the numbers on my copy, it's in red, there's a red line that goes from the corner of the project north, the number is 407 feet 4 inches. Then there is a similar line going to the south that says 239 feet 7 inches. And there is a line going to the east that says 597 feet 4 inches. Do those distances represent, can you please tell me what those figures represent?
I believe the 407 refers to the distance to that house to the north from the corner of the array. The 239 is the distance from the southeast corner of the array to the property boundary to the south. And the 597 is the southeast corner of the array to the property boundary to the east.
Thank you. And then there's also a number on the northern side of the project that says 66 feet 10 inches. Is that the distance from the solar panel to the northern property boundary?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Those are all of my questions. Are there any follow-up questions from the parties based on my line of questioning?
Yes.
Please proceed, Ms. Hill.
Mr. Moore, I believe that in response to the hearing officer's questions, you stated, you referenced plantings that were recommended by the expert. Do you recall that?
Yes, I believe I recall what you're referring to, but if you wouldn't mind elaborating, that will give me greater confidence.
When you responded to the hearing officer's questions in regards to, for example, consideration of planting evergreens, you referenced recommendations of an expert. Were you referring to Jean Vissering?
Yes,
And Jean Vissering was engaged by the Department of Public Service, correct?
I believe that's correct.
She was not engaged by you or working at your direction, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And she did not provide or rather the communication that you had from her is contained entirely within that item which was labeled Town Cross 1, is that correct?
I guess I'm going to object only so far as I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you just rephrase it? Simpler?
I can try. So the recommendations of that expert are contained, that you were referencing, are contained in their entirety in the document referenced as Town Cross 1, is that correct?
I don't know, I haven't read through Town Cross 1 in detail.
Did you, may I ask you to review Town Cross 1? It's still in front of you, or is it?
Sure. Yeah. My recollection, reading through the discovery, is that the discovery response to a very similar question included a little bit more from an email chain. So I don't know if this is I don't know what you submitted and what you pulled it from. It does appear that this is the entirety of the email from DPS counsel to looks like yourself and Leslie. Cadwell. So I think this is that email, and I don't believe there was anything else in that email.
And do you recall, Mr. Moore, did you attend the site visit?
I did not.
Proceeding. And did others from SunCommon attend the site visit at your direction?
Yes.
And did you confer with those individuals after that site visit?
Yes.
Can I ask what this is in response to the hearing officer's question?
My question in regards to, the hearing officer asked about the town request that Mr. Moore testified as to certain communications between the town and SunCommon regarding accommodations here. And so my question is whether SunCommon had in fact represented to the town that they had hired Landworks to perform an aesthetic analysis of this project.
Again, I have no idea what that's relevant to, what you asked, so.
Its relevance is that Mr. Moore testified about communications with an attempt to reach an understanding with the town regarding the request. And my question is that SunCommon had indicated that they were hiring Landworks to perform an aesthetic analysis, and our communication was good, then we'll have our aesthetic experts talk with your aesthetic experts and we'll sit down and work something out.
I don't, Mr. Moore has already testified he wasn't present at the site visit. I don't know what the communication about whether they were gonna hire somebody or not has to do with the communications working with the town to have an accommodation. So I just ask, could we focus on the merits?
Can I also clarify that Jean Bisson is not a Landworks employee? She was retained by the department.
I asked whether SunCommon had engaged with the town in developing the landscaping plan. And so I think it's appropriate, or it's allowable, I would say, for the parties to follow up on that line of questioning, so.
So, did SunCommon indicate that to any person associated with the town that it was intending on hiring or that it had hired Landworks to perform an aesthetic analysis of this project?
Again, I have to object, he wasn't there. She's asking about a communication that happened at a site visit, and he already testified he wasn't there.
I'm not asking at the site visit. At any time,
Okay, thank you.
did anyone from SunCommon communicate to the town that you had hired or were hiring Landworks to perform an aesthetic analysis of this project?
I don't know.
After all that.
Well, it goes to.
That's okay.
I wasn't there.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, that was a
I didn't
puckish
convey
comment
it.
on my
I can't
point, and you need not,
speak to every communication,
respond.
and
If you don't know, you don't know. That's fine.
I don't know what was said to you.
And just to clarify, you responded to the hearing officer with a bunch of information about height of plantings and so on. And that information was information you acquired from others, isn't it?
Yes.
You have no personal knowledge of the height of a mature viburnum, do you?
No, we consult with the folks who we buy the plants from and who do the professional plantings, and web resources to understand, what a reasonable expectation is.
And you stated that all of these varieties would be 6 feet tall when planted, is that correct?
I object, I don't think that's, actually, I'm gonna withdraw the objection, sorry, you can answer.
I believe that's correct.
And have you confirmed that those 3 species you mentioned are available from landscapers at 6 feet?
It depends on, my understanding, working with landscapers, is it depends on the time of the year and how many you call and how much money you're willing and able to spend. We will do our best to get exactly what we talked about putting in.
And what you've talked about putting in is each one of these species at 6 foot tall at planting, is
Okay, I'm gonna object because that's been asked and answered
It has been asked and answered.
at least twice.
Just making sure. All right, any further?
Does any other party have follow-up based on my own question?
I do, I have one follow-up question that relates to the fence question that you raised, and I understand that it's not certain yet whether a fence will or will not be NEC, depending, whichever way it went with the fence.
Yes.
Part of that. Thank you. That's all.
Does the agency introduce us to no questions?
No, thank you.
And Ms. Cadwell, do you have any feedback?
I do, but I would like to see if the witness would like a break.
The witness like to break?
I will admit, it's the longest 20 minutes I've experienced.
Break.
The witness like to break?
I will admit, it's the longest 20 minutes I've experienced. But I would prefer to keep going.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Mr. Moore, have you reviewed the testimony and exhibits prepared by the town of New Haven's witness, Michael Lawrence?
Objection, it's not within the subject of direct or the hearing officers.
I can make a proffer. The town, you read comments from the town about its request for aesthetic mitigation, and I am following up on my line of questioning goes to the recommendations of the town made and pre-filed by witnesses going to be coming up a little later that are directly relevant to the questions that you asked.
My question was from a letter written by the town. It was not based on Mr. Lawrence's testimony.
That's correct. However, the comment letters relate to aesthetic mitigation recommendations from the town. Mr. Lawrence is a witness for the town, and what I'm trying to establish from Mr. Moore is his understanding of the town's shifting position since those comments were filed.
I recall the question that you asked was the question whether he had reviewed Mr. Lawrence's testimony.
Yes, in order for me to have him make a statement, I have to establish first that he has knowledge of it. These are foundational questions to get to the point of addressing your questions about the comment letters that the town filed.
Does the town continue to object to the question of whether he has knowledge of Mr. Lawrence's testimony?
Yes, it was not the subject of direct or the hearing officers.
Fair enough, I withdraw the question. Mr. Moore, has the town made shifting recommendations for what it wants with respect to this project?
Objection, this would refer to, if you're referring to settlement discussions and negotiations that are not part of the record, they're not in this case.
I didn't ask him about settlement negotiations. I asked him about your, whether he's had shifting recommendations based on your questions.
And in regards to what the town's recommendations were, they're in the file, they speak for themselves. Mr. Moore's opinions of them are not relevant or admissible.
In fact, they are, because they were asked and answered earlier, and you didn't object.
I'm going to allow the question.
Thank you. Do you recall the question?
Why don't you restate it?
Has the town made shifting recommendations on what to do with respect to aesthetics on this project?
Yes.
Thank you. And isn't it true that the town's pre-filed testimony from Michael Lawrence did not recommend any additional plantings, but instead recommended to move the project?
That's correct.
Thank you. Are you aware, Mr. Moore, in your experience, that select boards keep minutes of their meetings?
Yes.
I'm going to hand counsel for the town what's been marked for information as SunCommon Redirect 1. Oops, sorry. And I'd like for you, Mr. Moore, to identify what SunCommon Redirect 1 is first, and then I'd like you to turn to the last page.
It There appears to be,
Objection. I don't understand the relevance of this, and again, there's no, you would have no personal knowledge of this discussion.
I don't believe that it has been moved into the record at this time.
I just asked him to identify what it was. I don't know how that's objectionable.
I would also like to know what it is with the description, please.
the top of the page is Town of New Haven Select Board Meeting, 7 p.m., dated Tuesday, July 21, 2015. Town offices, it lists who is present, adjustments to the agenda, and then agenda results. I believe it's the minutes of that meeting. That's what it appears to be.
And I'd like to direct your attention to the last page. And I'd like you to read to yourself the paragraph that I have boxed in. I think it's paragraph for council under old business number 3.
It reads solar discussion. Doug Tools.
Objection, the question was to read it to yourself, please.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
You can read it to yourself, please.
Done.
Mr. Moore, are you aware that the select board in July expressed an interest in having more trees planted at the Seguin property for the project?
I am now, having read this.
Thank you. I want to direct your attention to, this was probably around maybe closer to 10 o'clock this morning, when Council for New Haven asked you about South Road. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Is the project located on South Road or South Street?
Actually, from the maps in front of me, from the natural resource, these are in Exhibit 3. So the A&R Natural Resources map refers to it as South Street, and the Google Earth image underlying page 1 of that also refers to it as South Street.
Directing your attention to SunCommon 4, the application.
Yep.
Okay. Do you recall the, could you turn to attachment, I think it was attachment 3, the section on aesthetics?
Yes.
And just to refresh your recollection, do you recall the question about South Road arose from text on that page of Exhibit SunCommon 4?
Yes.
Is it possible that that's just a typographical error?
Well, what I see in paragraph 3 is in our application, we refer to the location from South Street, which is similar to the other resources that I mentioned. So. And then earlier, it's interesting, and earlier in the paragraph, a couple sentences up, it does look like we did a typo and called it South Road instead of South Street.
Okay, thank you. Do you recall your testimony that you did not perform a Queechy test or a Queechy analysis in this case?
To the degree that I'm not an aesthetic expert, yes.
You're familiar with the Queechy analysis, however, is that correct?
I am familiar with the Queechy analysis.
Directing your attention to your pre-filed testimony at page 4. Question and answer 8. Let me know when you're there.
Yes.
Do you recall, counsel for the town of New Haven asked you about the text on answer 8, line 10 and 11 regarding groomed hedges and substantial former landscaping?
Yes.
Could you please read the question and explain what your answer is actually responding to?
Question 8, why doesn't SunCommon surround the project on all sides with vegetative screening? And that's what we are responding to in terms of the character of the rest of the area, and that it would that would be out of character. And that's what we were responding to.
And in response again to the hearing officer's questions about the town's comment letters regarding aesthetics, you recall there was a series of questions earlier about that. Based on your
Can you
personal...
please answer verbally?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Apologies.
Based on your personal experience visiting the Seguin property and project location, is it your opinion that the project location will be visible from the town village?
No. Not be visible from the town.
Is it less visible, moved back away from South Street than it was under the original application?
Yes. I mean, the topography of the site, so if you're coming at the site from the north, you kind of come down a hill, and there's some trees, and then there are some plantings that the Seguins have done on the south edge of their property, and you know, their driveway's slightly up, and then so, and then when you're, excuse me, that's coming from the south down that steeper hill. From the north, as you're coming down the road, there's actually a little bit of a, you come up to a little bit of a higher point in the road, and there's, it's almost like up a little bit, and then it drops down topographically some, and that's kind of where the array is sited, is down in a slightly lower area. So I think moving it back further kind of puts it in that spot.
And finally, in response to the town comments letters, are you aware whether the town's comments were based on feedback or input from any of the adjoining landowners?
To my knowledge, no adjoining landowners have raised an objection with the town or with SunCommon.
And what about with the Seguins? Have they raised objections to the Seguins?
Oh, no. So having spoken with the Seguins.
Objection, hearsay, to his knowledge, yes or no?
I spoke with the Seguins, Mr. Seguin, Richard, and he's.
Objection, hearsay.
Before you answer, the question is, just so I understand clearly, whether adjoining landowners have raised objections with the coastal landowners?
Correct.
Okay. And your objection is?
The response was the hearsay. The question is gotta be confined to his personal knowledge, and it's a yes or no question.
So she objected before he finished answering, so we'd know whether or not he was going to have any hearsay, which is actually admissible here under certain circumstances, but I can have the witness, just as he said, he can tell us whether he's aware of that or not. He doesn't have to say what anybody told him. He just has to say whether he's aware and what his awareness is.
I think the board would like to know, in terms of a yes or no response, whether there have been objections to the project, either to SunCommon directly or to the host landowners.
Okay, I've not.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore. Why don't we take a 15-minute break? And my hope is that within that 15 minutes, the parties will also have an opportunity to confer as to whether we should move for the admission of any of the administrative filings, we'll call them. Thank you.
So that means 11:25. I just want to make sure everybody has the same 15 minutes.
I believe I have that originally.
Yes, thank you. To address what has been referred to this morning as the administrative documents, and there will be no parties seeking to move them at this time, and the parties, should they think that they are important to the record, will state such in their briefs, and any party that objects to that will have an opportunity to do so in their reply briefs. And also, the parties discussed a briefing schedule. Typically, we don't do that at this time, but before I forget to do that, the parties, as far as I'm aware, are seeking to submit their briefs on February 17th of this year, with replies due on March 2nd. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Correct. Yes.
That would be the briefing schedule, and I will need to do that at the end of today's hearing. So I believe we are ready for Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, will you please raise your right hand? Please take a seat.
All right, sit and raise.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Lawrence, I'm showing you a document which is not marked as an exhibit, but rather which is entitled Pre-Filed Testimony of Michael Lawrence. I'm asking you to take a look at that.
Okay.
Do you recognize that to be your pre-filed testimony in this case?
Yes.
And was it prepared by you or at your direction?
Yes.
And if I were to ask you those same questions today, would you testify in the same manner?
Yes.
And do you have any technical corrections to be made to that document?
Yes, I do.
And could you please tell us what those are?
On the page 3, question 1 should be followed by answer 1, not answer 2.
Okay.
And in answer 2, the last sentence, I have attached my resume as exhibit ML01, should be struck out. And the line 18 is the correct CV, if you will, ML03.
Do you have any other corrections to that pre-filed testimony?
No.
With those corrections of the admission of Michael Lawrence's pre-filed testimony?
Before we take the testimony away from him, I have identified something that I believe to be a error, a typographical error. So before we move to the admission, I'd like to place the testimony back in front of Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, can you please turn to page 4 of the pre-filed testimony?
Yes.
And in answer 6, line 18.
Yes.
You refer to a proposed 2.2 megawatt solar project. Is that accurate?
I don't know, actually, if that's accurate or not.
Okay. Well, I would ask that after today, if you are able to ascertain the project that you reviewed, including the project's proposed size, to please follow up with the board and the parties with your understanding of the project's size. And my understanding, based on the application that was offered as SunCommon 4, is that this is a 150 kilowatt project rather than a 2.2 megawatt project.
Okay, thank you.
May I just clarify, when a hearing officer was requesting regarding size, you were talking about size in kilowatts as opposed to size in area, correct?
Yes, the project's generating capacity.
Okay.
So, the town has moved for the admission of pre-filed testimony. Are there any objections?
No objection.
No. And with leave to clarify the inquiry of the grants.
Okay, and so the pre-filed testimony is admitted. Does the town intend to Mr. Lawrence's exhibits as well?
Yes. So, Mr. Lawrence, I'm showing you an item marked as Exhibit NHML01. Can you identify that, please?
Yes, that is the New Haven Town Plan.
And that was an attachment to your pre-filed testimony, is that correct?
Yes,
And that was an item reviewed by you in forming your aesthetic analysis, is that correct?
yes.
And I remove the omission of NHML01.
Are there any objections?
No.
No.
It is admitted.
Showing you the item marked Exhibit NHML02. Identify that document, please.
Yes, this is the historic site and structures survey for Addison County, which covered some of the houses in that area.
And is that appended to your testimony as the exhibit so specified NHML02?
Yes,
And is it something you reviewed in the performance of, in the creation of your aesthetic analysis?
yes.
With the admission of NHML02?
No objection.
No objection.
No.
Showing you the item marked
It is admitted.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Showing you the item marked NHML03.
Yes,
Can you please identify that?
that's my CV.
And does that accurately reflect your experience, education in landscape architecture?
Yes,
Move the admission of NHML03.
Are there any objections?
No.
It is admitted.
And I'm showing you a document marked NHML04. Can you identify it, please?
yes, this is the report that I prepared for the town of New Haven aesthetic analysis of the project.
Okay. And are you aware of the date on which you prepared that report?
Yes,
And what is that date?
November 2015.
And is there any point within it that you require to correct based on information gained since then?
Yes,
And what is that?
I believe it's on page 9. Let's see. Page 10, in the first paragraph after that whole heading, where it's the second sentence, the structures start 3 feet off the ground and rise to a height of 9 feet. I understand that the structures rise to a total of 12 feet.
And is that understanding based on discovery responses from the petitioner?
Yes.
So I'm gonna object insofar as, these aren't corrections. He just got it wrong the first time. It's not like it was a typo. she can certainly do redirect based on my cross-examination. But these aren't corrections, this is rebuttal, this is rebuttal.
Does the town have any response to that objection?
Just that was one correction to the exhibit based on information gained at a later time from the petitioner. It is a minor technical correction.
It's actually in the application that was filed in May.
Okay.
Take a minute to review the application.
Attachment 3, second paragraph.
Thank you, I see it. I am going to suggest that we leave the pre-filed testimony as filed, and I am going to have some follow-up questions on pre-filed testimony.
So move the admission of NH and L04.
Are there any objections?
No. No.
It is admitted.
Thank you. So, with that, Mr. Lawrence is available for cross-examination.
Does the petitioner have any questions for Mr. Lawrence?
Oh, a couple. My turn? Okay.
I think that was the order we established.
Okay. It just feels weird sitting, so I'm gonna stand over here. You don't mind my back standing? All right. No disrespect, Kim. So good morning, Mr. Lawrence.
Good morning.
It was nice to meet you on Monday.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
We talked a little bit about the Queechee test, didn't we?
We touched on it.
And you provided a Queechee analysis for this case, correct?
Yes.
You do a lot of work for New Haven, don't you?
A lot of work. This was the second project that I
Okay.
did for them.
And you're being paid to appear here as an expert witness, aren't you?
Yes.
$2,500, right?
Correct.
And as part of your review, sounds like you didn't review the application, is that correct?
No, I didn't review the application.
So your report is only based on partial knowledge of the project, is that fair to say?
I'm not understanding what your question is.
If there, your understanding of the project is only based on the information that was provided to you by Cindy Hill, is that correct?
No.
Okay, explain what the other bases of knowledge of the project are.
I went down and did on-site investigation on my own.
And speaking of that, did you make contact with the Seglins before you visited the site?
No?
Did you actually go on their property?
No.
You took the pictures from the road?
Yes.
And is it typical in doing your aesthetics analysis for you to take pictures from the road and not actually go on the project site?
It depends on the visibility. In other words, if the project's visible from the road, then there's really no need to go onto the site.
Okay, so and if it's not visible from the road, you would go on the site?
Might determine that if it's not visible from the road, that you might not have any reason to be, to think that you would come to a conclusion that it would be an adverse impact.
Okay. So if it's not visible from a roadway, it may not actually have an adverse impact?
True.
Now, you've testified or have offered pre-filled testimony in other solar projects, is that correct?
Correct.
And how many of those did you find did not have an undue adverse impact?
So far, none.
It's true, isn't it, that one of the projects where you found an undue adverse impact is actually not really visible from any public place?
I think all of the ones that I found adverse are visible from other places.
So, for example, the testimony you did for Harold Abelok in the case involving a 500 kilowatt system in Charlotte.
Yes.
That is only a little bit visible. Is that fair to say from a public place?
Yes, but I did not prepare a Queechy analysis for that project.
And are you familiar with the town plan? I think I heard you say you reviewed that as part of your preparation of testimony.
I did.
And would you agree that the Seguin property is located in a rural area?
Yes.
Do you agree that rural areas are distinguished from suburban areas by more than simply lower densities?
Yes.
And would you agree that the variety and diversity characterize a rural landscape?
Yes.
Do you agree that or that electrical infrastructure such as poles, wires, and electrical transformers are visible all along South Street?
Yes.
And that's typical of a rural area, isn't it?
Yes.
And in fact, New Haven has a lot of electrical infrastructure in it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And it's pretty visible, isn't it?
Certainly, a lot of poles and wires are visible.
Yeah, and you can see a lot of poles and wires from South Street, can't you?
Yes.
You can also see a couple of solar panels, can't you?
Yes.
And I want to direct your attention to ML4, the
Yes.
cover page.
Mhm.
I think that's in front of you.
Yes.
And isn't it true that that solar panel is actually much more visible from South Street than depicted in your picture?
From various places, yes.
Do you agree that paved roads affect a town's rural character?
They can.
And do you agree that South Street's a paved road?
Yes.
Do you agree that the Queechy analysis doesn't require a solar project to be hidden?
Yes, I agree to that.
And isn't it true that solar panels at about a 12-foot height will be approximately the same height as the shed on the Seguin property and about half the height of the house?
That's a one-story house, so maybe a little less than half. Yeah.
But they'd still be shorter than the house.
Yes.
And it will be shorter than the house across the street from the Seguin.
Yes.
It'd be shorter than the barn down the street from the Seguin.
Yes.
It'd be shorter than the house on either side of the Seguin property, correct?
Yes.
Did you talk to any neighbors about the project?
No.
But you're aware that no neighbors have complained about the siting of this project,
I
correct?
read that, yes.
Do you agree that the applicant isn't required to completely harmonize the project with the surroundings and isn't required to abandon it if it can't impact all adverse aesthetic impacts?
Could you repeat that again?
Excellent question. That was a terrible question of mine. I apologize.
I forgive you.
Do you agree that the applicant is not required to completely harmonize the project with its surroundings?
I agree. But that's what we're here for.
And you agree that the applicant isn't required to abandon the project if some adverse scenic impacts can't be mitigated?
Not necessarily. I don't completely agree with that.
Okay.
I think there are certain scenic impacts, if they can't be mitigated, and that goes to the third prong of the Queechy analysis, that they haven't taken what is reasonable. If it's absolutely unreasonable, then that is grounds for saying then it can't be, it needs to be turned down.
Do you keep abreast of the Public Service Board's orders in analyzing the Queechy test as part of what you do for the town of New Haven?
Not completely, no.
Okay. I'm going to hand you a document and I'd like you to just identify, actually I'm going to identify this as SunCommon, just for identification, SunCommon Cross 1. Do you need to do that? No. Okay, I didn't think so. This is just the order in the SSE in given case. And I'm handing you what I'm going to represent to you, because you don't keep up with board's order, but is an order in docket from the Public Service Board, CPG NNP 5978. Okay, I'm going to turn you to page 27. Okay, and if you need to take a little time to read the sentence that I have in the box in the surrounding text, I'd like you to do so, and with this question in mind. Having read that, do you want to change your answer about whether, what did I do with my notes? About whether the applicant is required to abandon the project if some adverse scenic impacts can't be mitigated?
I'll object. This calls for a legal analysis and conclusion. The item shown to the witness is a procedural order in a pending case that is not finalized and therefore does not constitute a precedential ruling of this board.
Well, I respond that he is offered as an expert. He is, I'm allowed to ask him hypothetical questions. I'm allowed to ask him questions about in his areas of expertise on Quechee. And that particular paragraph in that order speaks directly to Quechee, and it is a final order with respect to the issue of aesthetics in that case because aesthetics is not being litigated. So insofar as it is a preliminary order, it is a final order on that issue.
I forget the question that you're asking.
I asked him whether he agreed first, whether applicant is required to abandon the project if you can't mitigate all adverse scenic impacts. And he said, yes, they are. And I'm asking him to read this because the board says you don't have to do that. And I want to ask him, having been informed by the board, whether he wanted to change his answer.
And I would state that I believe counsel just mischaracterized the answer previously given, so I'd request that it be read back accurately before the officer rules.
Was objected to, and there was no answer to that.
One prior.
Do you keep abreast of the Public Service Board orders in analyzing the Quechee test as part of what you do for the town of New Haven? Answer, not completely, no.
The
Is
next
that the
question.
correct one? Or you want the one before that?
No, it was the next one.
The next one, this one
I think it's like the next two. I think it's like this.
Okay, next question. I'm going to hand you a document, and I would like you to just identify, actually, I'm going to identify this as SunCommon, just for identification, SunCommon Cross 1. I'm handing you what I'm going to represent to you because you don't keep up with the board's order, but it is an order from the Public Service Board, CPG NMP 5978. I'm going to turn you to page 27. If you need to take a little time to read the sentence that I have in a box in the surrounding text, I would like you to do so. And with that question in mind, having read that, do you want to change your answer about whether, what did I do with my notes, about whether the applicant is required to abandon the project if some adverse scenic impacts can't be mitigated? And then there was an objection by Ms. Hill.
So was it two questions before? Was the questioners
Just
first?
the question before that question, before the first question you read, I think.
Oh, he's even better than all of us.
Yeah, let me go back. Question, and you agreed that the applicant isn't required to abandon the project if some adverse scenic impacts can be mitigated? Answer, not necessarily, I don't completely agree with that. Question, okay. Answer, I think there are certain scenic impacts if they can't be mitigated, and that goes to the third prong of the Quechee analysis, that they haven't taken what is reasonable. If it's absolutely unreasonable, then that is grounds for saying, and it can't be, it needs to be turned down. And then question, do you keep abreast of the Public Service Board orders and analyzing the Queechee test as part of what you do for the town of New Haven? Answer, not completely, no. Am I getting the right?
Yeah, you are
Yes.
actually.
You got there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and so the question that has been objected to is, after reviewing this portion of a board order, whether his opinion has changed.
Correct.
And the objection is that you believe petitioner's counsel is asking him to draw a legal conclusion? Is that the basis of the objection?
Yes, as well as the fact that, as I said, the order is a procedural order in a pending matter and not, and therefore does not have precedential value that can be, so it's being mischaracterized as being a rule of the board. It's applicable only to that case, and that case is not finalized. It's procedural order.
It doesn't matter what stage. It's an order of the board. It expresses the board decision. And whether he wants to change the answer or not, and whether it's the right principle of law or not, doesn't matter. It matters whether he wants to change his mind or not. That's what matters.
I am going to allow the question with the understanding that Mr. Lawrence is an aesthetics expert and not a legal expert, and he is being asked to comment on something that has been offered by the petitioner. I will afford it away accordingly.
Any questions?
My answer. This says if some, I'll read it, applicants are not required to completely harmonize their projects, and they are not required to abandon their projects if some adverse scenic impacts cannot be mitigated. I think your question asked me if all adverse scenic impacts cannot be mitigated. And I think this really goes to what's reasonable, what's reasonable.
All right, thank you.
So I guess I'm not changing my answer.
Fair enough. And that's how I understood it.
Okay.
So did, you offered some information on historic sites in New Haven with your testimony and exhibit 2, I think, correct?
Yes.
ML2. Did you contact the Division of Historic Preservation regarding those historic sites that you identified as relevant to your analysis?
No, I did not.
Are you aware that Jamie Duggan from the Division of Historic Preservation reviewed the project and determined that it has no impact on historic sites?
I'm not aware of that.
Do you agree that South Street isn't identified in the New Haven Town Plan as a scenic road?
I'm aware of that.
And it's true that it's only Ethan Allen Highway, Main Street, and Otter Creek Highway that are identified as scenic corridors.
I'm aware of that.
Okay. You're aware of the site constraints on this segment property in terms of locating any kind of additional buildings or other development? Is that true?
I don't think I am completely aware of all of the site constraints.
Okay. You're aware that there's a wetland on the east side, correct?
I am aware of that.
And you've suggested, is it fair to say that you suggested to move the array to that east side behind vegetation?
I put that out as being if that's workable, that would be an ideal way to mitigate this.
And if it isn't workable, what's the alternative?
I would suggest to reduce the size of it.
Okay. And that's so you believe that it's reasonable to, in order to, I want to make sure I understand this, to actually reduce the size of the project that the applicant and the applicant wants to build in order to keep it out of a wetland and hide it from South Street?
hide it is probably a strong word, but to lessen the severity of the aesthetic impact, the visual impact of it.
And that visual impact, based on your report, is really based on the visual impact because it's close to the village green, right?
Not necessarily. No, it's really it's because there are some really nice views, and the character and the context of that area are scenic, and that and this project lessens that quality.
But you just said South Street's not a scenic road in the town plan, right?
No, but according to the Equiche analysis, there are scenic views. There's it still has scenic character, even though it's not designated as a scenic highway by the town.
So it's really any road in New Haven, because New Haven is scenic, would be scenic.
In that part of Vermont, yes, probably there's certainly a lot of scenic areas. There might be some places along roads that aren't as scenic as other places.
Now, turning to your exhibit ML4.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at page 2. So the picture on page 2.
Yes.
Okay, can you see the project site from there?
I don't think so, but
Yeah.
not too far down the road you can go.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this picture really doesn't tell you anything about the project itself.
It's, the first question that Equiche asks is what's the context of the area? And so when I do a Equiche analysis, I wander around the area a bit. And it seemed to me that the part of the beauty of this place is the village and its relationship to the more rural area. So I did include a couple of pictures, and I tried to describe that contrast and that charm, if you will, of the place.
So I'm turning to page 3.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a house on the top page, historic houses on South Street framing New Haven Green, and then there's the country store in New Haven Green. You see those?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you stand, when you were standing taking these pictures, you can't see the project site from there either, can you?
No.
I don't think so. So these are also just to show you pictures of the green. That's roughly, how far away is that again?
1.2 miles.
Can a human see, like how, I don't know really anything, you're the visual expert, I'm really not. But a mile away, how visible is, how well can a human see from a mile away?
Depends on how big the thing is they're looking at.
Okay, fair enough. And from here, a mile away, you said you can't see it, so
Right.
it can't be that big, right?
From these I wasn't developing this to indicate that you could see that it had visibility from these places.
But if it were really big, you might be able to see it from here.
Yes.
But because you can't, it's not really big.
From here.
Okay.
Really big is very relative.
So let's turn to page 5. And this historic residence is located how close to the project site?
This is at the edge of the village, so about a mile.
And again, can you see the project from this house?
No.
So this again is just to show the context?
Yes. In fact, on page 4, that diagram, what I was trying to communicate was the cluster of the higher density cluster of buildings at the Village Green, and then the sort of the spread out into the rural and the much more open space and the greater distances separating structures, and also trying to get a sense of the vegetation and the form of the vegetation in kind of the greater context of the area.
So remind me how many feet there are in a mile?
5,280.
Okay.
Something like that.
That's a lot of feet. And the size, the longest edge of the project, say the fence line, is how many feet?
It seems to me it was about 150 by 200, the overall project, but that might be the array itself.
So I'm trying to do math. I'm really bad at math. What is the percentage between, so really in context, we're looking at 5,000 something feet, and really the project is just a fraction of the area that you looked at in your analysis. Isn't that
Yes.
true?
Mhm.
A very small fraction, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So now let's turn to page 6.
Mhm.
And we've got another couple pictures. Let's start with the one in the bottom left, the Historic Residence and Village Rural Transition Zone.
Mhm.
And again, roughly how far away is this property from the project site?
About a mile.
And the other picture of the custom woodworking facility?
Just under a mile.
Now, have you, you looked at, did you look at Mr. Moore's testimony?
Yes.
You did? Okay. So you looked at the pictures that he included in his exhibit? Exhibit 3, Exhibit 2?
Yes.
So I'm gonna hand you that.
Mhm.
And let's see, could you turn to page 2?
The first, okay.
Yeah.
Page 2 of 7, yes.
Yep. That structure is closer to the project site than any of the structures that you put in your report, isn't it?
Yes.
And is it as nice looking as the structures you put in your report, or is it maybe a little bit in need of repair?
Maybe just a little bit.
It's still a pretty nice structure, though, even though it needs repair. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, can you turn to the next page,
Mhm.
page 3?
Yep.
So that, the structure that you see on page 3 is also closer to the project site than the structures you put in your report, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And that one, it's a nice house, but it's not as nice as the ones you put in your report, is it?
This is true.
Okay, let's turn to the next page of Exhibit 3.
Just want to check something.
Sure.
Yes.
And that, let's skip that one, let's go to the next one. Let's go to page 5, there you go. And can you describe what that picture depicts?
That's another residence on South Street.
And it's right up against the road, isn't it? Pretty much.
Fairly close, yes.
Yeah, and it's a single wide or a double wide?
I think it's probably a double wide, if I can remember that.
And it's not nearly as nice as any of the structures you put in your report, is it?
Correct.
And it's closer to the project site, isn't it?
Yes.
In fact, it's right next door.
Next one, yes.
Yep.
I have a question for context. Is this south of the Saban property, or is it across the street? Can you please locate me?
Number 5 is immediately south on the same side of the street. Okay. I mean,
I'm gonna ask you-
immediately north, I'm sorry, immediately north, yeah. Thank you.
Don't want to coach the witness.
No, no. Thank you, I like that. Ooh. Very helpful.
Just for the record.
Yes.
And I appreciate, because I know you know your north from south better than me, so I appreciate that you made me look smarter than I actually am.
I appreciate that too.
All right, so let's turn to Exhibit ML2, if we could. Okay. Let's go to page 27 of the town plan excerpt that you've got in your report, which I think is, well, where is it?
Ask for clarification, are we looking at ML1 or ML2?
Oh my goodness, thank you very much, Attorney Hill. We're looking at ML1.
Well, thank you, Attorney Callow, for that clarification.
We're looking at ML1, not ML2. I apologize. Do you have it with you?
I don't have it with me.
You don't have it with you, okay. Do you have a copy for him? Thank you.
Haven't had a copy, and I think there's several hundred in the building. Any additions?
I want that to fall. Let's turn to page 27, and I want to direct your attention to the section that starts at the rural planning area. And it's true that the project is located in the town's rural planning area.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, what was the answer?
Yes.
Thank you. Could you read the first paragraph? Or, I'm sorry, the first sentence of the paragraph starting with character for the record.
I'll object. It's generally, the exhibit is in the record, and it speaks for itself, and if we're gonna sit here and read the town plan, it's going to be a very long day.
Well, we're not gonna read the town plan, I wanna read the first sentence. And I'm gonna ask him some questions.
Okay. The character of this area is agricultural and rural residential with relatively low to medium density residential development, typically sited close to town roads.
And you would agree that the area around the Seguins has a mix of things that are close to the town road, correct?
Correct. However, I'm reading the second, I think the second sentence also speaks to that, which talks about larger lots back away from the roads.
Better be careful, because your lawyer didn't want you to read too much from the town plan.
So your question was, the Seguins are located fairly close to the road.
Can you direct your attention to the section marked conservation and resource protection?
Yes.
And in keeping with Attorney Hill's objection not to read the town plan out loud, could you please read to yourself the first two sentences of that section?
Mm-hmm. As illustrated on the resource maps included in this plan, New Haven has significant areas with characteristics that seriously constrain development. The town's zoning and subdivision bylaws should continue to protect the town's wetlands, flood hazard areas, riparian areas, important habitat, areas with shallow soil and other natural areas. Such lands should be kept in active agriculture or forestry use or in their natural state.
Would you agree that the wetland, based on the town plan, and that the wetland on the Seguin property, the town plan calls for that to remain in its natural state?
Yes.
Okay. So wouldn't you agree that locating the solar project in the wetland would be inconsistent with the town plan?
Yes.
Now, knowing that there is a wetland in the location you suggested, do you still maintain that the only generally available mitigating measure is reducing the size of the project?
If I said the only mitigating way to mitigate it was to reduce the size, I misspoke. No, that's not the only way to mitigate the project.
And what are the other ways?
The other ways would be to screen the project.
And the applicant has proposed to screen the project, correct?
Yes, correct.
Now, are you aware that at one time the town of New Haven wanted the applicant to plant more trees?
I was not aware of that.
Are you aware that the applicant has agreed to plant more trees than originally proposed?
I'm aware of the latest plan.
And are you aware that the latest plan has more trees than originally proposed in the application?
Yes.
And would you agree that if you surround the array with trees, it will stick out like a sore thumb in that area?
No, I'm not aware that it will stick out like a sore thumb. I think it depends on how you surround the array.
But you would, is it your testimony today that you would like to surround the array by trees, with trees?
You would have to be a little more clear about that. I mean, you could surround it with some kind of trees, and maybe it would be fine. You could surround it with other kinds of trees, and it would. So you'd have to be pretty specific as to how to proceed with a landscape plan that somebody could look at it and say, yeah, that's acceptable.
So it's really a judgment call.
Yes.
It's not science.
Correct.
So it's really sort of in the realm, so on one end would be, you know, clearly unacceptable, and on the other end, clearly unreasonable.
That's what the Cucci analysis is for.
So we're somewhere in between there, correct?
Yes.
Do you believe that, given the sorry, let me withdraw that. Given these facts, I'm gonna give you the facts as a hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
The applicant proposed a project and then moved it away from the street, then added plantings, and then added more plantings. Is that a reasonable thing for an applicant to do?
I think had they not done that, had they left the project where it was and not been willing to move it, I think that would have been an unreasonable attitude towards mitigation. The fact that they went from, I think it was 18 trees up to 25, in my mind, it doesn't approach what is required to kind of take the sting off of this, what I consider a fairly large development, and consuming a fairly important open space that people use, and they enjoy the views coming up and down that road. And my opinion is they could do a better job.
And how much traffic is along South Street? Do you know?
Not a lot that I'm aware of.
When you were there, how many cars went by?
I couldn't tell you, not too many.
Yeah. How long were you there for?
3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. You could just stand out in the middle of the street and take pictures, really, without worrying about being hit.
Yes.
So it's pretty, very, very low traffic road, right?
Yes.
So really aren't that many people are going to see it, correct? On a daily basis?
Those are all, always, what kind of, not that many people. But the people that do see it are important people, all of them.
And in fact, the people who live there are going to see it all the time,
Yes.
right? And none of them have complained, as far as you know.
Yes.
To clarify the record, yes, they have objected, or you
Yes.
agree with what Ms. Cadwell said?
I agree with what Ms. Cadwell said.
I might be done. And that might have been 20 minutes. Yeah, all right. Just give me a sec. I'm all done. Thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I would like to do a time check. I am happy to keep going, but I defer to the court reporter and the parties about whether we should continue and try to wrap up in a little while, or take a lunch break.
I'd prefer to keep going. I do have some redirect, and I don't know whether you prefer that it be before or after your thing.
May I ask some follow-up questions? You may want me to go before your redirect. That's okay.
Yes, is everyone comfortable with continuing now rather than taking a lunch break?
Onward.
Yes, okay. Does the Agency of Natural Resources have questions?
I don't anticipate that we will.
From the department?
Lawrence, I just have a couple of questions that, just for clarification purposes. I'm looking at page 12 of your aesthetics analysis report. conclusion, looking at the plans that were originally filed in this docket, was that there are insufficient number of trees. I think they initially proposed 18 trees, and they're now proposing up to approximately 25. And you just testified that although 25 is going in the right direction, it's not enough. I just want to get your opinion of how many trees would be enough or would be reasonable in these circumstances.
I guess the answer to that question goes a little bit to the process of getting here. How did we get here? It seems like there would be a number of different strategies for planting this array. And one of them, I think, was mentioned, and then at least I read it in some of the material, that there had been some landscaping proposed right along the roadway. And I think it was Jean Bissering that said, no, that should be moved back. Well, I'd like to have a conversation with her about that. Because it seems to me that if you look at South Street, you see places where there is hedgerow kind of material along the kind of ditch line, if you will. And that actually to let that grow up would be a very good thing along this area. It would be in character with the neighborhood, and it would kind of provide the first line of defense. Of course, you would be losing some of those looking across open meadow at middle ground and background views. But the idea to build something and then plant around it is, like it's a fairly simplistic strategy. It just seemed like secondarily it would be good. It'd be nice to have that, and then it'd be nice to have another kind of hedgerow adjacent to the project itself, and that you could almost split the resources that way. And by declaring a couple of zones, no-mow zones, just let it grow up, and everybody get comfortable with the fact that over time, we see it. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but we have this faith and confidence that over time it's going to soften, and we're all going to get used to it. So that's kind of my attitude towards this.
So, can I just clarify? So, acknowledging that screening is not an exact science, and that your opinion would be to locate the screening elsewhere, how many trees do you think it would take to reasonably screen this project?
Well, again, the question, how many trees? There's trees and there's shrubs, and you can plant a whole lot more.
So, how many trees of the variety that the petitioner has proposed?
Well, I'd really recommend that they kind of widen their vision a little bit and include a much greater mix. I mean, if I were doing this, I would go down South Street and I would say, here's what's growing in the wet areas. Here's what's growing in these hedgerows, and I would, on the north side, I would feel free to go ahead and put some things that get very large. I'd feel very good about putting some white pine in that hedgerow. Again, looking at the array and recognizing it has a life span of 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is, and work those things out. But I'm kind of uncomfortable saying exactly this many. I mean, I think the thing you want to do is do a sketch, talk to some other people about it, go back and forth, well, what about this and what about that, and kind of come to an agreement that way. But I don't know how the applicant came up with the first plan they came up with, but it seems like if they're really serious about doing this project, if they're really serious about a Queechee analysis, that this work is something that they should do, and they should do it well. I mean, they should be coming to this board with a really airtight plan. And I don't think their plan is airtight. I looked at what they showed on their drawing, and we're drawing trees that are full size 20, 25 years, growth on.
Okay, let me ask
Yeah.
it another way. Is there a number of trees where it would be unreasonable to require to screen this project? At what point does it start to be unreasonable? I'm just trying to get an idea of, what the delta is between what's being proposed and what you would propose.
It's a very tough question. I mean, because you say a number and then they say, oh, good, we got it done. And like they miss it on the next step, so. If you were surrounding it with white pines, if they could accept the fact that white pines get very big and it will shade the array from the west, I would say that 25 trees would be great. Because these trees are gonna they really are gonna get 30 feet in diameter when they start maturing. And it goes back and forth too. It doesn't have to be totally screened either. It could be done with like an interrupted hedgerow. But I think some of the material that's installed needs to be material that grows to the scale of some of the other hedgerows in the neighborhood. Because when all is said and done, if you're not thinking that I'm hiding a hedgerow, you're just coming down the road and you look over, you're just going through the neighborhood, you're not.
Maybe just follow
Yes.
up on that. Do you think that the species that have been proposed are inconsistent with the type of species in the area?
I don't think so, but I think the fact that they're limited and the fact that they're set out in a kind of an even, kind of soldier-like row is, kind of goes to, I think, what I heard testified this morning, sort of this formal look, which, I had the same reaction. We don't want that.
So staggered would be.
Yeah, maybe cluster some of the material.
That's it. Thank you.
I have a few questions. Please turn to Exhibit ML4, which is your aesthetic analysis
Okay.
report. And on page 10, please turn there. In the first column on that page, there's a sentence near the middle that says the structure starts 3 feet off the ground and rise to a height of 9 feet. Do you believe that 9 feet is what the applicant is proposing?
No, I believe it's 12 feet. I believe that the typo was in and rises an additional height of 9 feet to a total of 12 feet.
Okay, and with that understanding, would that change any of your analysis of the project?
No.
Same page, going to the right-hand column, again in the middle of the page, there's a sentence that says its location set back 135 feet from the east edge of South Street. Can you tell me how you arrived at that figure of 135 feet?
Yes. I took the graphics from the application, kind of brought them into scale in a CAD program that I have, and then just drew a line from the edge of the pavement to the, I can't actually remember if I drew it to the fence line or to the first line of solar panels. But I put it in a, kind of scaled it, if you will.
I would request a follow-up on this question, whether the 135 represents to the proposed fence line or to the western edge of the array. Mr. Lawrence, in preparing your aesthetic analysis, were you reviewing the July 14 landscaping plan proposed by the petitioner, which I believe included 18 plants, or were you reviewing the next iteration of it? subsequent to preparing this aesthetics analysis, have you reviewed the next iteration of the planting plan that includes, I believe, the same species, but a greater number?
Yes, I have.
And does the updated landscaping planting plan change your opinion of the project? From an aesthetics point of view?
It's getting better.
I'll ask a direct question. With the newly proposed landscaping plan, in your opinion, will the project continue to have an unduly adverse aesthetic impact?
Yes. And can I qualify that or elaborate on that?
Well, I have a few follow-up questions that may.
Okay.
Do the 25 or 26 proposed appointments constitute reasonable mitigation?
They're headed in the right direction is all I can say. I would not, the reason I'm saying some of this is that when I looked at the plan that was submitted, I looked at the size diameters of the plants that they're making a claim, at least visually, showing, which in my mind, if I'm judging a plan, I'm looking at it in plans and he's drawing something so big, I'm then, in my imagination, saying that's the size of the plant that they are proposing. And there's a huge difference between when those plants are installed and when they reach, if they're actually able to reach the size that they're illustrating. So while I appreciate the fact that they're increasing the numbers, I think they're also exaggerating the effect of the plants that they're installing.
Do you believe that the species, not the number, but the species that are being proposed are an appropriate selection?
I think they're fine.
Are you familiar with those species?
Yes.
Do you have any familiarity as to what the diameter of those species might be at maturity?
Yes.
Please provide those figures.
The serviceberry will max out at about 20 feet in diameter. The viburnum is 6 to 10 feet. I mean, it's an ideal condition. And the witch hazel, 10 to 12 feet in diameter.
I know, as Oliver asked you to state specifically an appropriate number, and if we're just considering these three species, do you have any opinion as to what a reasonable number of those plants would be that would constitute reasonable mitigation?
It would be wonderful to have more variety of plant material. And I know that I'm going way out of the bounds of the question, but for instance, sumac, if you didn't do anything and you just said in this zone, we're not going to, we're going to require that they don't mow here, and you just said in this zone, we're not going to, we're going to require that they don't mow here. I think what I'd be looking for is kind of a landscape strategy that says, yes, we're planting this, but then we're going to take care of it in, this is how we're going to take care of things. So that's the long answer.
noticed that this is not a question, but it's a statement. I noticed that you just said the inclusion of evergreens would be positive.
Mhm.
I believe that is not dissimilar to what Mr. Moore said that he would be willing to do.
Mhm.
So I think I'll just make a statement. That sounds like a good thing.
Mhm.
I have no further questions. Do any of the parties have follow-up questions based on my line of questioning?
Not for the patent.
No, thank you.
I would like Ms. Cadwell, I'm not doing you, so we'll have the floor for whatever you need.
Were you ever asked by the town of New Haven to reach out to the applicant and offer an appropriate aesthetic mitigation plan that would satisfy the town?
No.
And how much would it cost for you to do that for the town of New Haven?
Well, that's putting me on the spot. That's something I'd probably want to talk a little bit with, what would the scope of service be?
So it sounds like your charge was to just do a Queechee analysis based on the limited information provided to you by the town's attorney.
Well, as I answered that before, and to go down and take a look, yeah.
Did you recommend to the town that they ought to reach out to try to settle their dispute with the applicant about the landscape mitigation?
No.
Do you know Jean Vissering's work?
I do,
And do you respect her work?
absolutely.
I have nothing further.
Before we go to Ms. Hill, I just want to clarify that Ms. Cadwell identified a document in SunCommon Cross 1, but you did not move that for admission to the record.
Correct, and I do not wish to.
Good catch. I missed that one. Just two points of follow-up. Mr. Lawrence, mindful of not reading the entirety of the town plan, but in showing you exhibit NHML01. Oh, you have it basically there. Turning to page 23, the final text paragraph, and on to 24.
Yes.
And could you read that for us, please?
The view from the road is also important in establishing character. As new development occurs in New Haven's rural areas, consideration should be given to maintaining or enhancing that view to the greatest extent feasible. Where development will be occurring on open land, new buildings can be placed along the edges of fields or woodlands to reduce their visual impact and potentially conserve productive farmland.
And in your review of the town plan, is that view from the road an issue which is discussed at various points in the plan?
Yes.
And, okay, thank you. And then also, you've been asked a lot of questions here about the proposed trees, and you've testified in response to, I believe, both DPS and the hearing officer regarding the scale of the planting proposed by the applicant. Have you prepared some illustrations that might assist the trier of fact in understanding those references regarding the scale of the proposed plantings relative to the array?
Yes.
So Lawrence, I'm showing you the items marked NHML 05 and 06, and I provided copies to petitioner's attorney. I have one set of copies left. I don't know who wants them. Pardon? Hearing officer.
That's
Oh,
the
sorry.
department.
Okay. Can you identify those items, please?
Yes, they are two drawings that I prepared using the latest landscape plan as it was illustrated, and just doing some line work on it, and then comparing the size circles that represent the plants with the size circles of plants of a likely size when they were installed.
And when you say doing some line work on it, can you please explain to us what you meant by that?
Yes, I took the applicant's plan, and I drew circles at the same size as the circles that were illustrated on that plan, as well as the array, South Street, and the driveway to create orientation. And then in the center of each of those circles, drew a to-scale size circle of what the size of a plant would be in the general nursery trade when it was planted.
And what would be that size from the general nursery trade in your experience?
The diameter of the serviceberry would be about 4 feet, and the viburnum and the witch hazel would be closer to 3 feet when they were planted.
And so that exhibit NHML 5, can you just describe specifically what that is?
Yes, they didn't actually differentiate between I assume that the larger circles were the serviceberries, and the smaller circles would be a mix of the other two varieties. And the serviceberry circles are at 30 feet, so that's showing them 10 feet larger than the mature size of what the serviceberries would be. The other circles show as 12-foot diameter circles, so they're slightly larger than the viburnums, which mature out at 6 to 10 feet, and but they could be the witch hazels when they were fully grown would be that size.
And exhibit MLL6, can you describe what that is?
That is the, again, it's hard to see the 4-foot circles are a little bit bigger than the 3-foot circles, but it's simply taking the serviceberries where they're proposed on the petitioner's submission, and the smaller shrubs, which are the viburnums and the witch hazels, as 3-foot diameters.
And is, in terms of the diameters that you've illustrated on MLO6, what height would those plants be at planting to have that diameter?
I'm guessing that the serviceberries would be in the 5 to 6 foot range, and the witch hazels might be 3 to 4, and the viburnums would probably be 3 to 4 at most, more than likely 2 to 3 feet high.
And Mr. Lawrence, let me ask you this: in the industry,
Yes.
in the landscape architecture industry and trade, is there a rule of thumb for the level of maturity that you demonstrate plants on a landscaping plan?
Everybody may do it a little bit differently, but everybody sizes the trees some number of years out, but not to full maturity. It's usually 4, 5, 6 years out, something like that, to give people the idea, well, there's hope here, you know, when you see these little trees going in. However, generally when you plant, you don't plant for 25 years down the road. You're planting for 5 years, 10 years away. Okay, now, at 10 years, now your client is ticked off because you're having to start taking things out, but they're happy up to that point.
Thank you. So I would move the admission of NHML 05 and 06.
Is there any objection?
Only if I don't get a chance to cross-examine him on these exhibits that I just saw for the first time today. Otherwise, I'm happy to let them in. I just am entitled to examine him on something that she just introduced for the first time, and I've never seen.
I have no objection. The department has no objection.
No.
Okay, I will admit then, subject to Ms. Cavanaugh being allowed to cross-examine the witness. I don't think that the reporter receives a copy of these exhibits.
I marked them, but I don't have them now.
Those are the ones Mr. Lawrence has in front of him, I believe.
Want mine and I can.
I can get them at the end, that's fine.
So these are my copies, right?
Those are your
Yeah.
copies.
No one's allowed to leave the room to kill the
I just have to remember.
You ready?
Yes,
Or you-
go right
okay.
ahead.
Mr. Lawrence, your Queechee analysis isn't based on how big the circles are on the plan, is it?
No.
Okay. So the circle, how big the circles are on the plan is completely irrelevant to your conclusion?
Yes.
Okay. And you'd agree, just want to make sure I understand your testimony, that the size of the plants that you gave in response to Attorney Hill's questions were really sort of general answers. They weren't answers specific to the plants that SunCommon is going to purchase and put in.
That's correct. They could go and dig bigger material, but it would be, that would be an unusual situation.
So on ML6,
It's the second one.
yeah, can you draw the circle where you think the circle should go? So where it would look good, where the project would improve on that? Now that you've got the circles to scale, can you make a little drawing there? Here, I got a pen. Thanks. And can you draw where the circle should go in order to pass the Queechee test?
I don't object. I think council's asking Mr. Lawrence to devise a landscaping plan on site, and it's not his burden. It's the petitioners to present a landscaping plan that meets the standards of this board. Having had the department prepare one landscaping plan, not at his expense, it really is inappropriate for them to ask Mr. Lawrence to now prepare one.
So in response, she asked him how he would move the trees around, and he said that he might stagger and that kind of thing, and I'm just asking him, I don't really understand. I'd like to see what he's proposing on a piece of paper. He's an expert witness, and this is a totally legitimate line of inquiry.
I don't think Mr. Lawrence is proposing anything. He's responding to questions. It is not his position to propose a landscaping plan for the petitioner on whose burden it is to meet this standard.
I'm not asking him to propose a landscaping plan for us. I'm asking him to defend his testimony that says that if you move the things around, and this is in response to the hearing officer's questions as well, when you move the things around, you get a better plan. So I'm just because you have presented the visual depiction, I'm asking him to present the visual depiction of what he just testified to. And it's not inappropriate. I'm not asking him to satisfy our burden. We met our burden. I'm asking him to defend what he just testified to and show us just as he is perfectly capable of doing. And if he's not capable of doing it here today, you can certainly say he's not capable of doing it.
I object. Sorry. I'm out of line, I know.
You can confer with Ms. Hill. We should make an objection. I think she already has made an objection. Cadwell, are you confused about the term stagger?
Yeah, I don't really know what he means when he says stagger, because these look kind of staggered to me. So I want to understand, when he said that these could be moved around to improve, I'm asking him to show us where they should move to improve. Unless he wants to withdraw that answer, or what, but I think I'm entitled to know, based on this depiction, which we just saw here today, so you can move these around, these circles that are now to scale, where should they go?
Mr. Lawrence, are you prepared to explain verbally to Ms. Cadwell what you mean by staggered roof lines?
I could describe it better than I could draw it right at the moment.
I would ask you to describe, because it seems unclear, what your earlier testimony meant. So it would appear that Ms. Cadwell would appreciate a greater description of what you meant by staggering plants.
The question really, I think, is how do we landscape this so that it meets the burden of proof, so this is not, in my mind, I'm the one testifying, so I guess in my mind, what would it take? And I had mentioned that I think the inclusion of some evergreens in to increase the number of plants and possibly look at a strategy for managing the area along the road. So staggering could be as sort of dramatic as saying we're gonna plant a hedgerow adjacent to the solar array itself, and we're going to have a secondary hedgerow out along the road. That could be defined as staggering. I mean, I think generally what you think of is we'll do two lines, rather than going one straight line, we'll go one here, one there, one here, one there. In this kind of a situation, I mean, I would probably take two or three of the service berries and put them in a cluster together. I'd go up and down the road a bit, and I'd say, where's the corner? Let's take care of the corner. And so I put a cluster of things there. And I'd go to the other end, and I'd say, where's the corner down there? And I'd say, let's screen the corners for starters. And then I'd probably mass some of the shrubs together, in clusters along the way. So staggering is probably a kind of a term that maybe we're gravitating to that doesn't really get deep enough into. I think it's an attitude of we can do this. Yeah.
So I'm noticing that I'm not sure I still understand, and you've used a lot of. The record can't see this, but Mr. Lawrence is testifying with his hand, showing size, shape, clustering, that kind of thing. And I'm just curious. You can talk with your hands, but you're not able to actually show what you're talking about with your hands on the piece of paper?
Well, I think the thing is that I could do it, and it could be wrong.
Okay.
I mean, I could give you a concept that I think would be probably closer to what I think, what's in my mind, but I don't know how helpful it would be. I think really, I kind of go to what Attorney Hill said, which is the burden of proof is on you guys to come up with this. We're just looking at all the stuff and saying, we don't think it meets the burden.
So you have nothing specific to offer other than the testimony that you provided here today on how to improve the applicants in very specific terms, other than your testimony, which is on the record. There's nothing sitting here today that you could offer in addition to what you've already offered.
If you keep asking questions, I might be able to offer more. I don't know. I'm trying to offer everything I got. But I think drawing it is, I would think it would be counterproductive. And if somebody said, you have a couple of hours to think about this, and you've got the resources, and you understand the scale, and you've got the tools and everything in front of you, and you also have, go ahead and use a wider, broader plant palette. Yeah, I could do that. But right here, it's a little bit.
Would you be willing to, if SunCommon wanted to get a landscape plan for you for this, would you be willing to give one to them?
Probably got to talk to Attorney Hill.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I don't see why not.
I have nothing further.
Okay.
Ms. Hill, you had a line of questioning, and then we moved for the admission of these two documents, and they were admitted. And I want to make sure that you were finished with your redirect questions at that time.
I was, sir, I am fully finished. I am
Great.
done.
And I want to make sure that the other parties have an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have that have arisen based on these newly introduced documents.
The department has no further questions.
I don't have any questions.
We may hand the original documents to the court reporter before anyone, before anyone moves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you. We have no further witnesses that I'm aware of. We have already established a briefing schedule. Each party's witness has some follow-up or some questions and answers that are either subject to check or I specifically ask for follow-up. It seems reasonable to get those responses in prior to the briefing date so that parties are filing briefs based on full knowledge. Can I ask the parties to follow up within 1 week?
So do you rely on the transcript too? Okay, that's what I thought. I could hear that.
I'm
So-
giving the same, may the record reflect that I am humming in the same tone that Attorney Cadwell was
So
earlier.
our practice
Skepticism.
for those of us who, we like to use the transcript to know exactly what was asked, and we understand from Ken that she'll have that to us by the end of January. So what I guess I would propose, the counter proposal would be, we all have an interest in making this work. And so after the transcript, do you want to do a week after the transcript or something?
Sure, in 5 days or a week after the transcript.
Does that work for you?
Yes, let me pull the calendar.
Being mindful of putting undue pressure on the court reporter, which we are not doing
Exactly.
in any way whatsoever.
Full advised.
Exactly.
So, the last business day of January is the 29th.
Wow.
So, should we say Friday, February 5th for responses?
Perfect. And if they're before that, great. How's that?
So we said Friday, the 5th for deadline for the
Witness responses.
witness response follow-ups.
Any other matters that we need to address today before we adjourn? See issues. So, thank you everyone, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Just in time for my 1 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.